My understanding is with the seriousness of as we grow older and people being able to get medical attention and so forth, that Congress is not held to be having to follow those same types of ways of getting medical facilities. So they follow a different set of rules. And so in fairness to the entire public, okay, Congress is part of that public, so why shouldn't they be held to those same set of rules? They make great money and they get a long, sustainable salary because you've served. People will serve their whole life working for companies here in the US, but those salaries are not sustainable. We are told that we need to do Social Security, which yes, we have contributed to, but that's not going to amount to anything like the salaries that Congress is making, okay? And then they don't have the rules around insurance and everything else. So I'd like to hear your perspective or correct my understanding.
Great, thank you very much. This is a great question. I can't speak to what the rules were before I entered Congress, so I'll tell you what the current situation is. When I was first elected to Congress, the Affordable Care Act that was passed in 2010, I believe it was 2010, I was elected in 2012, and in the original Affordable Care Act, there was an exemption for Congress saying that you don't have to buy healthcare off the healthcare exchange. That was something that many of us who got elected felt was wrong for the exact reasons that you're talking about. There should not be exceptions for members of Congress if you're telling the country, here's what you got to purchase your healthcare from. And we passed legislation that fixed that. I buy my healthcare insurance for my husband and I off of the Affordable Care Act healthcare exchange, just like everybody else, and get Blue Cross Blue Shield. So again, I'm not sure what it was before, but now members of Congress and staffers have to get their healthcare insurance the same way everyone else is purchasing theirs. Social Security. I can't speak to what it was before, but I pay into Social Security out of every single paycheck. That's the way it should be. All of us should be contributing in just the same way to our Social Security fund. I'll make a comment just on Social Security because we mentioned it, and because I know it's an issue of concern about whether or not it will be there for us when we need it, and will it sustain itself. I think there's two really important things that we need to address as it relates to Social Security. Number one, make it so that no one is allowed to raid the Social Security fund that we all pay into throughout our lives to pay for other things within the government. It is not an entitlement. It is an earned benefit that we pay into, and we deserve to have the peace of mind and confidence that it'll be there for us when we need it, no matter how old you are. And part of that is ensuring its sustainability, but also expanding it so that cost of living adjustments actually reflect the cost of living, means that we need to lift the cap so that those who are making, I think the current cap right now is you pay into Social Security up to $117,000 a year. I might be a little bit off, but it's right around there. And if you make more than that, people who make more than that no longer have to pay into Social Security above that amount, which means the vast majority of those who are sustaining the Social Security fund are, low to middle income or upper middle income individuals across the country, but those who are making the most and doing very well are not paying into it after a certain point. I think we need to get rid of that cap so that no matter how well off you are or how much you're struggling, we're all paying our fair share into Social Security. That'll allow us to help expand it and make it so it's more realistically applicable to the needs that we have. I thought there was a third thing that you talked about. Oh, pensions, retirement, right? I know this is something that has changed over the years, but what the current system is now, like with, I know certainly government jobs, but maybe some other jobs in the private sector, it takes 5 years to become vested as a member of Congress in the federal retirement system. So if you serve 2 terms in the House for 4 years and then you leave, you don't get any retirement from Congress at all. Nothing. If you're there for longer than 5 years, then they have an equation that takes the number of years served, multiplied by or divided by whatever your salary is, and you get a certain percentage. The longer you serve, the higher that percentage is, but I think it starts at 40% and it goes up to 50% longer. And so I've read some of the same things I think that you've read, where maybe previously this was true, where if you serve as a member of Congress, even for one term, you get your salary as a pension forever. That is not the case. That's not the case. Nor should it have been in the first place. And I think the real core point that you have is incredibly important. That as our founders laid out this vision for our country, that we would have leaders of, by, and for the people, that does not mean creating a little small society of elite individuals who are, don't have to live by the same rules as everybody else. If anything, members of Congress, elected leaders, should be held to a higher standard to ensure there is not even a perception of conflict of interest, to ensure there's not even a perception of special treatment just because you've been elected to serve and be a voice for your constituents in your community. So some of the things that I've been advocating for example, members of Congress, I don't think should invest in stocks because it's too easy, and we've seen this. A member of Congress just got indicted for this a few months ago, where he put a lot of investments in a certain stock, encouraged a lot of his colleagues to do the same, and he had some leadership role in the company that owned those stocks, or is a pharmaceutical company. And he benefited pretty immensely from that. And oh, by the way, he was pushing legislation that would have helped further the financial interests of that company, to clear away any perception, even perception, that any vote that I or any member of Congress would take, and we all vote on every bill that comes to the House floor, but especially the work that's been done in the committees, there should not even be a shadow of doubt in your mind that I'm casting a vote that will benefit me financially. And this speaks to the question I often hear is, well, you've got a lot of members of Congress who come in without a lot of money. I didn't come from money. My parents worked really hard. We've worked hard throughout our lives. Don't have that much money. Still don't after 7 years in Congress. But somehow there are some who will come in and serve 10 years and as not millionaires and walk out as multimillionaires. So how does that happen? We need to break down how people are financially benefiting themselves because of their service, and take those factors away so that we really do have a government not subject to this rot of corruption that makes it so our government can actually focus on its mission of service to all of us, to the American people. Thank you for your question.